Trong motga, Malik de kan nak bo qua kak sao byuk qua Barbara, and hung on en han chong nan ra rang du kong fi chi lot song vik dui on koi nama la chien loak lam on kiet suc. Barbara mong muon on duok ren lian trong en hung su kien fap ly va su met moi den muc on se bo kuok. Tai nin, Malik nan ra ko I dang gay len su met moi choan. Koi kung, Malik de lin he voi lut su Joe Martinez, nuoi de jup du on trong sut nu nam. Sang ham sao, on de chuan by tat ca tai lu kan thiat de kong chi din tu vi ma con dao engwak tinna. Ba gay sao, trong kuok hop hoi dong HOA, Barbara bat dao voi and hung sao buk ve 6 fam qua Malik. Tai nin, Malik kong and gun lap lai madua ra kak chung cu fap ly, bao gom kak gia to chung min gwin so hu tai san qua min. Kai on ta dua ra ga chung min rang and goi na qua Barbara tuk su la qua on, su im lang bao trum kan fong. Malik teep tuc kang din gwin so hu qua min doi voi bat dong san qua Barbara, lam cho ko kong the fan bac. Kan fong chim trong im lang, va trang tai kim sot qua Barbara tan vo truok mat moi nuoi. Malik de engwak tin the hon tone, keen Barbara kong con gwin luk gi trong kuok doi downai. Tensions between Malik, Barbara, and Stephen, after they were drawn into suspicions and legal action. When Malik first met Barbara, he noticed her and Stephen's discomfort, especially when the events surrounding the board of directors were not entirely convinced of Malik. During a tense conversation, Malik directly questioned Barbara, but she remained silent, not giving a clear response, creating a tense atmosphere. Barbara expressed her displeasure through her actions and eyes, but Malik did not yield, looking at her with a wavering gaze. The next morning a thick envelope was in his mailbox, this time without the HOA logo. It was from a law firm. Inside was an official complaint, filed with the Davidson County Housing Authority, accusing him of being a fraudulent squatter. Barbara had gone from small fines, to trying to get him legally evicted from his own home. Malik stared at the document. His pulse was steady, but his hand clenched the paper. She had actually done this. He read through the complaint. The claims were flimsy, that he had failed to provide proof of home ownership, suspicions that he had rented out the property under false pretenses, and a claim that multiple neighbors had expressed concerns about his presence. No names, no actual evidence, just assumptions colored with legal jargon. Malik walked slowly through the neighborhood, taking note of all the violations he saw, like overgrown lawns, broken shutters, trash cans with obscure house numbers, and trash cans still sitting on the curb from the day before. He then filed his complaints, each backed up with time-stamped photos. Less than 24 hours later, Barbara reappeared, not alone this time. She was standing at the curb of Malik's driveway with Stephen Reynolds, the HOA board vice president, whom Malik recognized from the HOA website. Barbara seemed more tense than usual, her forced politeness barely concealing her irritation. Barbara greeted Malik and informed him that they had received Malik's list of complaints. Stephen glanced at Barbara in a low voice and said that only issues the board deemed significant could be written up, and that not every minor violation required formal notice. Malik calmed down, saying that he wanted to see everyone else held to the same standards. Instead of responding, Barbara issued a final warning to Malik about replacing the porch plan and maintaining the lawn. Malik stared at the paper, then looked up at Barbara, realizing that the problem wasn't the grass or the furniture, but that she was trying to make him feel like he didn't belong here. Malik took a deep breath and laughed, then pointed out that under the terms of the HOA there was no requirement to replace furniture in perfect condition. Barbara stiffened, and Malik raised an eyebrow and asked, "So you enforce rules that don't exist?" To raise his voice, to give her an excuse to make him the problem, so he just smiled. "I'll think about it," he said, and closed the door before she could say another word. Barbara didn't like that evening, as Malik sat outside drinking a beer, he saw Barbara chatting with a strange man and pointing towards his house, which made Malik realize that Barbara was trying to pressure him to leave. The next morning, Malik received an email from the HOA, Homeowners Association, informing him of his violations of the rules. First was about the arrangement of outdoor furniture that was not up to HOA standards, even though many other houses in the neighborhood had similar arrangements with no problems. Then he received another email about the condition of his lawn, even though he had just mowed it and kept it well maintained. The issue was quickly brought up as overgrown grass, and a warning that there could be a fine if the problem was not corrected. Malik realized that Barbara was using these minor infractions to create trouble and force him to leave. However, feeling defeated, Malik decided not to give in and would respond by continuing to play along with the games Barbara was trying to create, ready to deal with the next set of rules. She looked over his shoulder, her eyes scanning the house as if checking things out. Then she held up a piece of paper, an official request for proof of ownership of the house. She said there had been complaints. Malik's stomach clenched. From neighbors, who had expressed concerns, like different cars coming and going, furniture deliveries at odd hours. Some worried you might be renting out the property, violating the HOA rules. Malik let out a short laugh, thinking she was joking. Barbara's face didn't waver, however. Malik kept his cool, explaining that he owned the house and had only moved in a month ago, so there were those deliveries. The cars that came to visit were from friends and family. Barbara pursed her lips, her hands gripping the clipboard. Yes, we have a policy, to make sure all homeowners are properly vetted. We will need to verify your actions. Malik knew exactly what this was. He didn't ask any of the other neighbors, to prove his ownership of the house only. He was still the same. He kept his voice at a normal level. You can pull the profile yourself, it's public information. Barbara's lips curved into something, supposed to be a smile. But there was no warmth behind it. Then I would have no choice but to escalate the matter with the HOA. Aboard. Malik exhaled slowly, holding back the words sitting on the tip of his tongue. She wanted him to react. She wanted him to be angry. A woman flashed a big smile, but no one else acknowledged his presence, and standing in the middle was Barbara, arms folded, whispering something to the others. Malik didn't need to hear those words to know. This wasn't about the HOA rules, it was about him. But if Barbara thought she could intimidate him, he left. She was surprised. The letters kept coming and getting, letters sealed with the Brentwood Estates HOA seal. At first he just ignored them and stuck them in the kitchen zipper, only skimming them. Barbara Whitman was determined to make her life miserable. But by the time he received the 5th letter in 2 weeks, the letter had read. Malik stared at the paper, irritation bubbling under his skin. He picked up his trash, just like his neighbors did after work, but apparently that wasn't good enough. Curious, he decided to do a little experiment. Determined to find out the truth, Malik woke up early the next morning and walked around the neighborhood to observe. By 9 a.m., he saw rows of trash cans still out on the curb, many of them unpacked. However, none of the other houses had received a violation notice like he had. Snapping a few pictures, Malik emailed the HOA board to ask why he was the only one with the violation. No response. But 2 days later, Barbara showed up at his door. This time, she didn't knock, she just stood there, arms crossed, a stack of papers in her hands, waiting. Malik opened the door, leaned against the doorframe, and watched her calmly. "Can I help you?" he asked first, but Barbara did not respond immediately. But then Barbara cleared her throat. "We want to maintain a certain standard here," she said. Her eyes stopped on the moving truck still parked in the driveway. "I assume you will remove it tonight." Malik raised an eyebrow. "It will be gone when I finish unloading." Barbara nodded, but it was not a satisfied nod, more like she was making a mental note. "Well," she said, "and just so you know, HOA requires that the trash be placed at the curb no earlier than 6 a.m. On collection day. I noticed yours was out last night." "I did not take them out," Malik replied evenly. "The previous owner must have." Malik closed the door, exhaled slowly. Maybe she was just special. A lot of HOA presidents had. He would not let anyone stress the neighbors ruin his new start, but the next few days make it clear that Barbara isn't the only one she's watching. A warning notice appears in his mailbox about an unauthorized vehicle in his driveway, his car. A second notice had been issued for lawn maintenance, improper. His grass had grown an inch, maybe 2, an HOA violation letter had come in for a porch light that was too bright. Albeit the same fixture, the previous owner had used. Over the weekend, Malik had collected a neat stack of papers from Barbara. He hadn't spoken to her since they first met, but it didn't matter because she had introduced herself. He had kept his cool. Maybe she was like that with everyone, maybe he just needed to follow the rules and she had backed off. But that hope was quickly dashed when Malik went for an evening walk, and passed a group of neighbors. Chatting in the nearby driveway, they fell silent when they saw him. Malik Patterson had worked hard for years to achieve his dream, owning a property in a quiet, peaceful place. Finally, he had made it happen, a beautiful two-story brick home in Brentwood Estates, Tennessee. Sits on a neatly manicured lot, with a wraparound porch and a spacious backyard. However, from day one, Malik sensed something was wrong. Moving boxes were still lining the driveway, when Malik noticed eyes peeking from behind the curtains. Watching from the porch, lingering for a second longer, as neighbors walked their dogs. No one approached, no friendly introductions, no welcome to the neighborhood. At first just silence. He brushed it off. Maybe people here are just keeping to themselves, maybe they'll warm up over time. The first sign wouldn't come. But the real sign came the next morning. Malik had just finished making coffee when he heard a knock on the door. Standing in front of his house was a woman in her 60s, standing on his porch. She was wearing a neatly pressed beige blouse, pearl earrings and a pin with the letter capital symbol pinned to her cardigan. Her posture was stiff, her expression neutral. But there was something in her eyes. Malik held out his hand and smiled politely. "Nice to meet you, my friend is." "I know who you are," she interrupted, glancing past him into the house. Then she handed him a thick stack of printed documents, a guide. Malik flipped through the pages and noted the usual rules: lawn maintenance, limited exterior paint design, approved mailbox standards.